Today, I'm going to be ranking every single Kanye West album in a tier list, starting with the worst albums and going all the way up to the best albums. In last place, I feel like everyone knows this one. It's going to be Jesus is King, and I feel like Jesus King is still a solid album. It's not that great, but I think it is still a solid album for other rappers, but for Kanye, it clearly pales in comparison to any of his other work. There are some interesting Sunday service choir features on this album, and I feel like there are some solid songs on here with Follow God, God Is, Use This Gospel, but I feel like all the gospel elements that they included in this were really, it kind of toned down what I actually felt like the feeling of the album was. And I mean, while it was super gospel, I'm saying he could have made this into a kind of gospel, kind of rap, kind of hip hop album. And I feel like made it a lot better, especially if you listen to like the original Use This Gospel part. It's a lot better. And I feel like a lot of these songs do have some weird cringe moments on them, especially like Closed on Sunday, even though it is a pretty solid song. Closed on Sunday has some really, really bad lines. I feel like it doesn't really fit that gospel theme. But this album is still solid, but in Kanye's tier list, I think I'd have to rank this in D tier. In 11th place, I've got Watch the Throne. It's not a solo Kanye album, but I feel like it has to be thrown in here because Kanye's on it, a lot of the time. And I feel like there are a lot of really interesting songs on this one, with the first four, in my opinion, starting off really strong with No Church in the Wild, Lift Off, Paris, and Otis. But I feel like kind of the rest of it doesn't really go off that well. I do like the Frank Ocean song and Who Gonna Stop Me, and I do like some of the deluxe tracks, but I feel like it's not a very strong Kanye album. And while Kanye does put in some really good performances on some of these, like I said, I feel like the first four is just an amazing 4-track run, and then it just falls off, and I feel like I don't know, this whole album to me is very underwhelming from a Kanye and Jay-Z album, and I just think that's because it doesn't have like all that Kanye production on it. Like, it still does have the Kanye production touches, but I feel like it just doesn't sound as much like a bombastic Kanye produced album. Well, I know Kanye did produce the whole album, but like I feel like it doesn't feel like that. And I'm gonna have to give this one C tier. It's still a solid album though. In 10th place, I have the very influential 808s and Heartbreak. While I think this album definitely influenced a lot, I don't really feel like this album is as good for a Kanye album. And I feel like there are some really amazing tracks on this, like the track Amazing. And I think Heartless, Welcome to Heartbreak, Love Lockdown, Paranoid are all really, really good songs. I feel like there are some songs that aren't as good. Pinocchio Story, See You in My Nightmares, Bad News, even Say You Will. But I still think it's a solid album. I just think it hasn't really it hasn't really aged that well compared to how much the influence has aged really well. Which I think the influence of the album, yes, it's definitely amazing, and it's done so much to, promote like pop rap into music. But I don't really think the album is that good, especially when you see the contemporaries that are using the same kind of sound as this, and I feel like they're really excelling on it and making it a lot better. But I still think there are some really banger tracks on this one, and I think this one's going to have to go in B tier. In 9th place, I've got Donda. I feel like Donda has to have some of Kanye's best work on here. I think Come to Life, Lord I Need You, Jesus Lord, Moon, I feel like is pretty solid, 24. There's so many good songs on here is what I'm trying to say, but I think this album is so bloated. If you count the extra tracks on this, there are 27 tracks on this. If you don't, there's 23 on it. And it's still like an hour and 20 minutes, even if you don't count those extra tracks. So it's just a crazy long album. And I feel like it doesn't really hold through the entire time. You also have songs like Tell the Vision, Donda Chin, and a lot of these other songs that don't really add much to the overall sound of the album. And I just think there are a couple songs that I really think could have been cut. If Kanye cut this down to a 15-song album, I think this could have been maybe one of Kanye's best works, but it's just so bloated, and there's just way too much like fluff, fat here that needs to be cut out. But I still think it's a great Kanye album, and I think it's going to have to also go in B tier. In 8th place, I've got Ye. Come on, it's Ye, but I feel like this album is a little bit too short and too cut down. It's kind of the opposite of Donda, where there are a lot of great tracks on here, but it's just too slim, and there's not enough volume of it for it really to be like, oh, this is one of Kanye's best works, in my opinion. And I think that's what really holds it back. I think every single song on here is pretty good. I mean, Yikes, All Mine, Wouldn't Leave, No Mistakes, Ghost Town, and Violent Crimes are all very, very good Kanye songs. I don't like I Thought About Killing You at all. So I think that really brings it down. But I feel like the rest of these on here are definitely like 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 Kanye songs. And just I Thought About Killing You, it kind of takes it down a little bit. But I think this album is great, but there's just a little bit too little like volume of tracks. And I feel like that's what really holds it back. If you added maybe like if it was maybe 10 minutes longer, it could have been a lot better in my opinion. Maybe a couple tracks longer. I understand it needed to be 7 tracks to fit with the whole theme of the Wyoming sessions, but I don't know. This album just needed a little bit more to go up on higher on my Kanye tier list, and it's going to have to also be in the B tier. In 7th place, I've got Kids See Ghosts, another collaboration album, but this one's clearly Kanye's, and I think the production on this one is pretty amazing. I just think, again, as with Ye, it really just suffers from a lack of volume. Well, while I think the highs on this are extremely high, Reborn, like I feel like there's so many highs on each song. I feel like it just gets a little bit too tacky at points, where it's not tacky, but it's like it just gets a little bit too gimmicky. And I feel like Kid Cudi's gimmick falls off a little bit at points. And I think just his singing and the gra-ta-ta-ta with Kanye, I feel like, isn't that great. But I still think this album is an amazing album. It's still a great album. But in terms of a Kanye album, it doesn't really do it for me. While the production is still stellar and never subpar, it's always bombastic and really has that Kanye feel. It just needed a little bit more to me to really do that. But I understand Cudi and Kanye. I feel like it works where it's like this is distilled down the best stuff they have. But I just think compared to the other Kanye albums, it doesn't really hold up as well just because there's not a lot of volume similar to Ye. So it's also going to go in the B tier. In 6th place, moving on to the top half of the list, we've got Yeezus. I feel like Yeezus has to be one of Kanye's more controversial albums, at least with the fan reviews. And I think this one is definitely one of Kanye's better albums. There's so many good songs on this one, like Black Skinhead, New Slaves, Hold My Liquor, Blood on the Leaves, and Bound to. I feel like those are all very, very good songs. But then there's some that I wouldn't say aren't like good songs, but like Send It Up, I Am a God, I feel like are definitely not the greatest songs on here. And then like On Site, Guilt Trip, I'm In It. Definitely solid songs, but I don't think they're Kanye's like top of the top. I think they're a little bit too industrial for me, which is, okay, other people might like it. I don't like it as much. I still think some of Kanye's best work is on here, but I think it's a little bit not too experimental because it's not like there's like death grips and all that, but it just doesn't fit Kanye's total standards, and I think it's a little bit too noisy and too loud for me, at least at points, and I think it just does too much in that realm. So I still think it's a great album, but I'm going to have to also give this one B tier. Still a very solid album, though. In 5th place, I've got to put Graduation here. I feel like there's so many good songs on this. You got Big Brother, you got Homecoming, you got Flashing Lights, you've got I Wonder, you've got Champion, you got Good Morning, you got Stronger. You got so many good songs on here. And then they have Barry Bonds and Drunken Hot Girls, which just it's one of the worst 2-track runs on any Kanye album, and it's just right in the middle of this album. I don't know, I don't like it, but to each their own. I still think Graduation is one of Kanye's best albums. You can clearly see the evolution in sound to these are more like pop songs. And I just think the top of the top here with I Wonder, with Good Morning, with Flashing Lights, those are such good Kanye songs, some of Kanye's best songs on here. And I just think he really kills it with this album. It was really nice evolution seeing those first 2 albums and going into this. And then I just think this is one of Kanye's best albums here. It's not better than these next 4, but I think it is one of Kanye's best, and it's going to have to go in the A tier. Next up in 4th place, we've got The Life of Pablo. I think this is a great Kanye album. You have Ultralight Beam, Father Stretch My Hands, Famous, Feedback. So many good tracks on here, and it just all it's a perfect mix of that gospel sound with a lot harder sound, and I feel like it just works perfectly. It just is really Kanye at his most Kanye, especially with songs like I Love Kanye on here, and No More Parties in LA, 30 Hours, St. Pablo. Those are some of my favorite Kanye tracks myself, and I just love that he had to put on St. Pablo at the end. He had to slap it out there. I think it's one of the best Kanye tracks of all time. I think it might be the best Kanye track of all time, at least until, some other ones have been released. But I don't know. This album is so good from top to bottom, and even the songs that I hadn't really liked that much to like begin with, like Highlights, I feel like I've come to like these songs so much. I just love the production on this album. I think Kanye just really did his thing when he was making The Life of Pablo, and it really just feels like a Kanye album through and through. So I'm going to have to put this one in A tier as well. In third place, I've got Late Registration, one of the best Kanye albums. I guess they're all kind of the best at this point, but Heard Him Say, Touch the Sky, Gold Digger, Drive Slow, My Way Home, Crack Music, Roses, so many good Kanye songs on here. And one of my favorites actually is just Diamonds from Sierra Leone without Jay-Z. I don't really know if this is a thing that a lot of people say, but I think the song is better without Jay-Z, no cap. We Major is also really solid, and I don't know, I feel like this is just a little bit worse than College Dropout, but it really just shows how good Kanye was at the whole Chipmunk Soul thing. I just think overall, it's just Kanye at his best is this in the College Dropout, and it's just the most like, I don't know, unfiltered Donda Kanye, just him producing the best. And I feel like it's not like this super bombastic sound that he goes into later, but it's just really nice and like soulful and I don't know, vibey. And I feel like that works the best for Kanye. And I think there's just some of the best Kanye songs on here with Touch the Sky, We Major, and Diamonds from Sierra Leone all on here. And I think those are some of my favorite Kanye tracks. So I'm going to have to also put this one in A tier, but at the very, very top of A tier. In second place, we got the College Dropout. They say there's nothing better than the original, but there is something that's better than the original. College Dropout is still an amazing album, though, and I think there's some of Kanye's best tracks on here. Last Call is a 12-minute track, and I think it just keeps you entertained throughout the whole thing. Family Business is a banger. Through the Wire is a banger. Slow Jams is one of Kanye's best, like, not Kanye songs. It doesn't really feel like Kanye, but it still is Kanye. Never Let Me Down is a Kanye banger. Jesus Walks is one of Kanye's best songs and all. And I think I'm just saying this for every single album, but there's always a good Kanye songs on it. We Don't Care is an amazing song, and I think just throughout this entire thing, you can just see Kanye's evolution from producer to artist on this one. And I don't know, I love the use of samples throughout this entire thing. And I don't know. I just think a lot of people will overhype it because it's the original, but this is really one of those albums that really hits every single time I listen to it. And while it might not have the best tracks, the best Kanye tracks, it's just super solid throughout the entire thing. And there's just so many good tracks throughout the entire thing. And I never can be bored of this album. In the first spot, we have to give it to My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. It's a basic album, but I just love this album so much. Dark Fantasy, Gorgeous, Power, All of the Lights, Monster, So Appalled, Devil in a New Dress, Runaway are all songs that I could be like, these are the best Kanye songs of all time. And I feel like a lot of people could be like, oh yeah, that's one of my favorite Kanye songs of all time. And then there's Hell of a Life, Blame Game, Lost in the World, Who Will Survive in America, which are all solid songs, good songs. I think Blame Game is one of my more favorite Kanye tracks if it wasn't for that little 2-minute sketch at the end, but I still think everything on this album is just 10 out of 10 until some of those tracks, but even those tracks have a lot of very, very interesting moments and just amazing points. And while this one might be just edging out the College Dropout, they're both in S tier, and I feel like both these albums are S tier. I think so much of Kanye's discography is so much better than other people, but My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy definitely has to be in the number one spot for me. Let me know what you guys thought of this tier list in the comments. That wraps up the whole thing. You can see it right here. And if you guys want to drop a comment of what you thought you would change or what you disagree on, put it in the comments. I'll debate with you. I'll disagree with you. I'll tell you my real opinion on why I thought each of these were in their spots. I'll tell you why one album was over another. And if you did like videos like this, please like and subscribe. I'm going to be making a ton more like this.